Summer rain. Fantastic for the garden. Well, it's not gonna really do much. I can feel it's already kind of stopping. But the smell is always so nice with summer rains. I like that, at least. This week's video is going to be a little bit different because we're going to Denmark, and I thought I've always wanted to ask the previous owner a lot of questions about the history of the place, because we don't really know anything. So I've asked him various questions, and he's sort of the last one who can really answer them, all the questions about the history of the place. I just thought it'd be exciting to actually know what's happened, and when was the last time you did an olive harvest? When did you stop having cows and sheep and all those questions, and also questions about renovations on the house and the floors and all that stuff. Some questions might seem a bit boring, and some more exciting than the others, but I just asked all the questions that I thought would be interesting. I did film it, but as I asked the previous owner, he would not like to be in the video, which is completely understandable. I understand that, so I'm just gonna translate the answers so I can explain them to you. And that's what this video is gonna be about. So the first question I wanted to ask him is how many generations of his family lived in the house. And it has been in his family since it was built, and it was built in 1653, so that's a long time ago. And as we talked back and forth, that's if a generation is between 25 and 30 years, in between them it's approximately 12 to 14 generations that's lived in this place. And yeah, not much else to say to that question. That's just crazy to imagine that it goes so far back. I haven't had the time, but I also want to go to the municipality and and see if I can gather some more information about who lived here and when they did other stuff like that. And I also asked him how our little city, our little village here was when he was a kid, the previous owner, and he told me he's not old enough to have gone to school here, but he went to school in the city we drive through, the last city before we get here, the last little village before we get here. He went to the preschool there, but then the above levels he went to the biggest city downtown, because I think that happened in a lot of places in the world, that they closed the small village schools and then went to the bigger ones, like the one down in the sort of big city down here. When he was a kid, there was about 40 to 50 people living here in our in the village, and that's the least I could say is that's definitely a bit more than the 5 people that are living here now. We are increasing it by 1 person, so we're gonna be at 6, but it's nothing like it used to be. It would be funny to repopulate it somehow, but who knows, there might be some trend in the future where people want to go back to a simpler lifestyle and make their own food, so they don't have to eat ultra processed food and actually make the food themselves, but we'll see. And if you go even, for example, 40 years back, I talked to another guy in a city. He told me that there are 90 people living in the city in the early 1900s. So that would be approximately 50 adults and then 40 kids. It's crazy to think that this tiny village of 30-40 houses housed so many people. I imagine the place would have been buzzing, but every day you wake up and you just go outside and do your jobs in the garden, and it's all about making food enough for the winter. It was a simpler life, that's for sure. That's what I'm sort of drawn to by this project and this idea. There was, to say the least, with 90 people, also a lot more life here in the city than there is now, because the church here, the parish of the church, would be like the village down here before we come to our little village, and then down by the river when we get off the big road. So every Sunday at least there would be a lot of people for the church service, because I guess you needed religion back then more than we do today. Now that we're so science-based today, we don't really need the faith to make our crops successful, I guess. I also asked him if he had if they had a bar or a business here, because when we started looking at buying the place on Google Maps, there was a business. So you could see there was a located business on Google Maps, but it wasn't a bar or a cafe or anything. We found out that it's because all the products they used to do, the olive oil and all the vegetables, the zucchinis, the tomatoes, and they did a lot of different vegetables and the oils, and they did honey and they did wine. They would go to markets and sell that in Zarzana and La Spezia, which is some bigger cities located near the sea, not too far from here. They'll go there every Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday and sell all their produce, and that's why there was located a business. Back then we didn't really understand Italian too well. That's why it's always been a question for us, because it was called something we didn't understand. They also did jarred beans in tomato sauce, which they also sold. So we actually have a whole pallet in the basement of that stuff. It's probably gone bad, but if the world ever goes under, we have a lot of food in the basement. They only shut down the business like 4-6 years ago. The jarred beans in tomato sauce business down those 5-6 years ago, because the previous owner had had an accident with his back or something, so he didn't feel like working the land anymore, or had the energy or the passion anymore to do it. So that's always interesting to know when it all stopped. Furthermore, I don't know if you guys remember that when I did the tour of the lands with the map where you can locate yourself, I said that I might have been over exaggerating when I said we had 300 olive trees. That's apparently, he reassured me again, the previous owner, that it is true that we have 300 to 400 olive trees located down by the river, which I'll have to go explore. I've tried to take some drone shots with it, which I'll put in the video now, so you can actually see it. But to me, it doesn't look like there's 300 trees, so I couldn't really pinpoint where they are. So I think I'll have to go down there again, which is always exciting. So I don't mind doing that. But on this drone shot, I don't believe I see 300 trees. They could be covered by other vegetation or whatever, but it is, to me, exciting to know that we could potentially become olive producers and sell high quality olive oil. That's sort of one of the big premises of us buying a place. It needed to have an olive grove, preferably a big one. So it's nice to know that it is actually big and it is there. The problem was, we talked back and forth, the previous owner and I, is that the olive grove down there is not marked on the paper maps I had. So I'll have to go down to the commune one day and get some proper ones where everything is marked, so I know exactly where it is. Because when I went down there, the biggest piece of land, which I thought was the big olive grove, it was just a forest. So it's a little bit further up the river, and then I think I could find all the trees. But there's some on the drone shot. I see at least 50 there, so they should be there. The previous owner says they planted, I think, 50 trees more in that little olive grove, so they should be there, and it should be exciting to explore if all of the ones they planted 15 years ago actually survived. I can also say, because I asked, that the last time they harvested olive by the river is like 15-18 years ago, so the trees will probably be in an even worse condition than up here because of the lack of care. But again, a lot of potential in my eyes. And up here it's like, I think it was 10 years ago they did the last olive harvest. Slowly I'll get it back to normal. I even, one of the other days, I talked to some guys down by the road. They do firewood, and I talked to them about selling, like renting out some land for them to make firewood from it, and they would pay me. But I had an idea, if we helped each other make the road down to the olive grove again, and they could have they could have some of the land to make firewood down here, and in exchange for helping me rebuild the road, because they have an excavator that would definitely make the life easier, removing the big logs, the big stones on the road, and all the obstacles. So I think I'll suggest that to them. Another question I asked the previous owner is, how old are these two grass stables, which I'm currently renovating and turning into a rather big tiny house. And he couldn't really say for sure, but he's 61 years old, and they were obviously there when he was born. But in the arch down there where the 1653, the year 1653 is written, there's also another year, it's 1924, which I suggested to him that could be when they did these grass stables, because you also have the cement lines in the foundation, which could suggest that it's not as old as the other part, because cement wasn't so widely used in the 1600s. I don't even think it really existed. It would be lime back then, and you wouldn't use it in construction like that. So my guess, I suggested this to the previous owner, that maybe it's the grass stables that's from the 1924, and he said, yeah, that's our best guess now. Not saying that I'm gonna assume that, but yeah, that's the best guess. So that would be approximately the age of the home we're trying to turn into our future home. But asking that question, he also told me that they renovated the main house in like 50 years ago, because he remembers that the whole family was sick, so they had to sleep in the kitchen while they redid a part of the roof, and they got a new bathroom 50 years ago. I don't know if it was their first bathroom or what it was, but it probably wasn't. They probably had a bathroom before that. But you don't have to go very far back before the world was a bit more primitive, even here in the Western world in Italy. The toilet that was renovated 50 years ago obviously wasn't the one we have inside now. They tell me it was renovated like 8 years ago. It's pretty modern, and I like how it looks, so we're not going to do anything about that. I think it would be fine for a vacation home. Everything works, and the tiles are not ugly or anything to look at. Pretty simple and stylish. I also asked the previous owner when they stopped having cows, and he told me that it's around the time when his father passed away, rest in peace, about 20 years ago. And that's where these old grass stables really come into the picture, because the cows would be located down below. I don't know if you guys remember me cleaning down there. Maybe I'll put some photos of that in the video, because it's a mess right now. We just stored everything down there while renovating this place. And it's very dark down there. The videos are not so great when filmed in there. But they installed the grass here on this top level where we are trying to make our dream house, and as it was needed down in the cow stable, they would pass it through the two little holes here in the corners. There was also one in the bigger room, but we sealed that up because I only need one to pass the chimney and all the water hoses and all the electricity. The one of these hoses is plenty enough to get that all done. So yeah, 20 years ago they stopped having cows here, and they had around 5 to 6 cows. At 1.5, at 1.6, and if you go even further back, they had more cows when they were out in the pasture. But that's many years ago, and he couldn't really recollect perfectly when that was, which is completely understandable. And a little funny detail he also told me is when they were almost done filling this entire room with grass, his father would take a ladder and then pass the last bit of grass through this little window up here, and the previous owner would start stacking it up to the roof in here. And then, yeah, as I said before, they could slowly use it and pass it down through those holes when the cows needed more grass to eat to get through the winter. So a lot of interesting small quirks about the place. It's fun to learn about. The previous owners also had sheep. They had around, at some point, 70 sheep. How do you say that in plural? Well, 70 sheep. And they're of course a fantastic animal to have here, because they would keep all the olive groves clean, the ones up here and the ones down by the river, so you wouldn't have to cut grass, and you wouldn't have this feeling that I'm walking around with every time I cut the grass, that it's just going to waste the grass. And of course the sheep would, their manure would be fertilizing the trees and the vegetables wherever they would go. So that's definitely also one of my dreams, to have sheep at some point, so all this wonderful grass and vegetation doesn't really go to waste. Although it's not because I want it all to be, all the grass to be perfectly cut or anything. I want to leave places for the bees as well, but it's a more natural way to sort of have the grass cut down, so you can easily harvest the olive trees and get around on your land. And he told me also, the previous owner, that he would just, when they're here in in the area who would just whistle, and then 10 minutes later they would all be inside the stable. I think it's just a beautiful relation between a man and an animal, that they can feel so safe, that they can know that he can know them so well that he can just whistle, and they'll all be back in the stable for the night. Another question I asked the previous owner is how you get into the attic here. The attic above our bedroom and the bathroom, because you can see there has to be something in here. Oh, this sounds hollow. I haven't tried to touch here because they told me there was a hole here. That makes sense. Okay, so yeah, when they renovated the bathroom like those 8-10 years ago, they must have put this in. But it is just a piece of roofing felt, so it should be pretty easy to get in there. But then I have to consider, do I really need to get in there? The roof is working, there's no holes or anything in it, so maybe it's not necessary for me to get in there. But I guess I'm just very curious by nature, because I can get into the attic of the rest of the house here from this chimney and out this way. I can get into the attic, no problem. There's this hole in the kitchen, but can't really get in there. But now I found out it's a lot easier than I thought. It's just a little piece of roofing felt. I also asked the previous owner how old my favorite project here, the lean-to roof, was, and he told me that it's at least 70 years old, because it was here when he was born. Also the roofing sheets. Then I can understand very well why there were so many holes and it was that bad condition. If the new one I'm putting on can last for 50 years, well, I'm quite sure it's not even going to be my problem fixing it. So that's very encouraging, I think, that it's lasted so long. So that was a good thing to hear. I should have also asked how long time ago it was that it was painted, but some information are more necessary than others, I guess. But when I come back from Denmark, this is definitely gonna be top priority, and my muscle strain should be gone. It is already now a lot better, because it actually helped relaxing a little bit. That's for sure. Another thing I thought would be interesting to ask is how old is the cement in the yard? Because it's more normal in these cities that you have these big, beautiful natural rock slabs in the yard, and they also told me that these stones are underneath the cement here, which are like in our neighbor's yard, because the cement is just ugly. And I also asked how old it is. The cement is approximately 30 years old, and they said they put it here so they didn't have to do so much cleaning. I guess it will be the grass that will grow up between the joints of these big rocks in the yard. But if I ever one day run out of things to do, which I probably won't, I could start with a jackhammer and get them out again. Only other problem we talked about is that it would be a big cleaning job, because these rocks, they normally have these small rows in them, where I imagine the cement would really get stuck. But it would just, for the aesthetics of the place, would just be so much more beautiful with the rocks that's always been here. So that might be a project for the future, because the cement is so ugly. And then you can also reflect, would it be easier just to put some new tiles on top, or is it more exciting to dig out the original ones that's beneath the cement? It should be, it's 20 centimeters thick, the cement, so it would be a big job. But I think it might be all worth it when I look at our kind neighbor's yard, where they still have the old natural stones. They also told me that The reason this part is raised by 15-20 centimeters here is this is where they had all the fridges, all the cooling for the vegetables before. When they would harvest them, they wouldn't necessarily go to the market out right after, so they would put them in coolers here to store them, and the ones they didn't sell. And yeah, here's the roofing sheets, which I didn't manage to put on the lean-to roof because of this little dumb muscle strain. I of course also had to ask how old our little tractor is, Troels the tractor, and it is 20 years old. This is obviously an older model than 20 years because they bought it used. I like to do that as well. You can save a lot of money by not buying new stuff all the time. There might be a little bit more reparation, but in the long run I think you can save a lot of money by not buying new machinery and cars all the time. They bought it because they needed a bigger and stronger tractor, and that's very fun to say, given this is a very small tractor. But all machinery has just gotten, including tractors, has just gotten bigger and bigger during these years. Also, we are in the mountains and there's not room for a big tractor. But yeah, not using it too much during summer, but I bet there'll be some projects real soon where I need it. My next question to the previous owners was when they last did a chestnut harvest. That is sort of here in the mountain regions of Italy. That's sort of what they used for flour, because you need a lot of flat areas to properly do wheat. And they also had bread and they did wheat here, but it's easier to do when you have flat fields and stuff. So for the majority of their flour they would use chestnut, and they harvested chestnuts about 25-30 years ago. That's actually our biggest patch of land. It's towards the city over here. We have 2.5 hectares of chestnut, also down by the river. So that would also be an interesting project at some point, trying to harvest some chestnuts and then roasting them. But the last roast here in the city, in the chestnut, because every little village had their own chestnut oven where they would first roast them, and then after they've roasted them for I think it takes a week, they would grind them, and then you'd have this chestnut flour. But he can't remember they actually did it here in this city. Yeah, he's 61 years old, so that's a long time ago they stopped using the chestnut oven here in the city. And the last time they did harvest the chestnuts, they sold them. So a truck would just pass by, and then they would just sell the chestnuts to them, to sort of have some extra income. And for their personal use, they also sometimes, a long time ago, they collected some and then went to a nearby village to do it, but not here in our actual village. But yeah, all these small mills and olive presses, and they slowly die, and it's only some few big ones that survive. It's a bit unfortunate in my opinion, but when there's not a lot of small farmers that would have the need to go and have their stuff pressed or roasted, it's quite impossible to run a lot of these small businesses, but that's just how it is. Again, maybe we'll get back to that at some point. I don't know. I also asked the previous owner when he did wine the last time, and he tells me it's 13 years ago. And there's approximately around 1,000 grape vines around the property. You can see they're sprouting from everywhere, but given that no one's been taking care of them, they're in a pretty bad condition. But if you gave them something to crawl up, I bet you can get a wine production going pretty quickly. So, as I've said so many times before, another interesting project when I find some more time. The previous owner also used to do a lot of honey on the property, because why not? There's so many wildflowers and they can help you get a better olive harvest, a better fruit harvest and all that stuff. And then he says that's one of the last things he closed down, so that will be 6 to 8 years ago when they stopped doing honey on the property. Again, I would really also like to get going on that, because I must admit I like sugar, but the white refined sugar is very bad for you. So honey is a very great natural alternative if you have a little bit of a sweet tooth. I love honey. We always have honey, so it would be just amazing to make your own. Is what I'm trying to say. I also asked, how old is this little shed and what was it used for? I always thought it was used to have as a chicken coop, but apparently that over there, where one of my first videos, I disassembled that one over there, that was the chicken coop. And this one was for curing hams inside, more particularly pig's hams. The very popular Italian ham that you call the prosciutto. You also have the prosciutto di Parma, which can only be produced in Reggio Emilia, our neighbor region. And it's approximately 40 to 50 years old. We talked back and forth, and he told me that it has to be 50 years old because it's a very long time ago that they had pigs. So yeah, for curing hams. Another question I asked the previous owner was, how old are these floors? Because these floors are one of the things that really made us fall in love with the place, because we find it quite both funny and cool that in all of the 5 rooms here in the house, it's a different kind of tile. We have the black one in our bedroom, and out here sort of the cream colored one, and red inside the guest room, and another color. So I also wanted to know when it was put down the floor, but he didn't know. It was just there when he was born. So again, at least 61 years old, probably more. There's some of the tiles that are cracked and some are not, but I like all this wear and tear, the characteristics. It all like adds to the character of the house. That's it for this little video. I hope you enjoyed the answers to all my questions for the previous owner as much as I did. I definitely got my curiosity fulfilled with all these answers. It's always interesting to know the history of a house you own or see. I guess that's why we all travel to see cities with history. There's a lot of that here in Italy. Although it was, of course, hard for him to be specific, some approximate answers are nice as well. I really enjoyed asking all the questions. Unfortunately, he didn't want to be in the video, which I completely understand. That's why I've been trying to pass on and translate the answers I got. There won't be any video next week. For that I apologize, but yeah, I'm in Denmark. That's pretty much why. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll see you not next week, but the week after.